Hey, so let's talk a little bit about some things that are directly, relatable to tenor drummers, quad drummers, when it comes to how we approach things. So you've already seen the videos, or if you haven't, go check out the videos that talk about both right and left hand of match grip players in the ensemble. For quads, there's a huge similarity to um, method of movement that was written by Lee Howard Stevens when it comes to keyboard technique. A very, very grossly in-depth book when it comes to just that method of movement. But we definitely use some of those exact concepts inside of our teaching when it comes to moving around the drums as well. Stuff that we don't really talk about in the middle of the season or the end of the season, but when you are now getting ready to submit a video, you really want to make sure that you're focusing on the fundamental aspects of your playing. So I won't go back in the depth and we haven't really gone too far in the depth of anything on these videos. It's just some general pointers. But let's just talk about, and some of you are in this same situation. I've got some emails that say, hey man, I'm supposed to send something on quads. I don't have quads. I don't have a quad pad. I've been asking people to make sure they do try their best to get a quad pad, but I get it. Some people might not be able to. But this is just utilizing one surface. You could either envision, I've seen people put pieces of tape down the middle of their pad and try to think of different locations to really just kind of work on some of this, again, at a very base level approach. But let's say this side of my pad is drum 3. And I won't talk too much about zones. We get very particular with those as well. But I'll talk about that once I have a quad pad or a set of quads here. But let's say this is drum 3. And this is my drum 1 on this side. Inside of your playing, it's always a great idea to make sure that you're playing everything that you want to move around the drums on one surface. And then making sure that the axis of which you're worried about and concerned about is being handled. Accents to taps, stroke types being handled, making sure that all of the sounds are in their exact right place. Then the challenge of moving that around the drums changes considerably. But from one surface to the next, inside, very brief condensed version, after you strike the drum, if your next note is over here, inside of this rebound, so you strike the drum and the stick starts its rebound. Or it might not. It might be a controlled rebound stroke, which there's still a rebound there. So it's still inside of its rebound. But let's say you're going from forte to forte. Inside of this rebound, you need to be moving over. You need to be getting your hand over as if you were only playing 8 notes on this drum. How would your hand be set up? So the way that we talk about setting up is this is Spock. This is 1, 2. This is 3, 4. All right, and the zones are really close on 3, 4. They're typically closer than a lot of people want to play them. All right, we try to think of those zones being in a straight line between 2, 1, 3, 1, 2, 4. We try not to allow the elbows to constantly be moving in an arc type fashion, but we try to make sure that this is Spock, this is 1, 2. So there's still a slight angle in with my sticks, and then this is 3, 4. Some people come from the ideology in the background of 1 and 2 are parallel and 3 or 4 are a little further out. I typically don't like that. Some people use 1 and 2 parallel, 3 and 4 parallel. To us, it really helps with Spock being normal playing position, either 90 or less than, whatever the case may be. And then 1 and 2, still having that little bit of angle in, so the wrist can still be activated. A lot of people ask, like, well, do you teach French grip on quads? Because they'll notice some people playing with the thumbs a little further, pointed towards up as opposed to pointed towards each other. One thing that we try not to do is have the thumbs totally on top. We definitely don't want to play in a French grip technique. We definitely don't want to play too of that Germanic grip technique that's too flat of hands either. That really poses some issues with not only just playing on one surface, but multiple. Try to make sure we have that happy medium. A lot of times you'll find quad drummers that get a little more towards the French grip side of things, spectrum, if you will, than maybe a right hand of a snare drummer. I try to have those be very, very similar. I'm always constantly telling quad drummers to get their thumbnails to point towards each other more. Maybe not totally to where it's too flat of a hand, but just a little more. Reason being, if we played with a flat mallet or stick on drum 1, and then we just threw this over here, this note, then in essence, I would be playing all notes on that drum with a pretty different grip and technique and wrist turn than what I've been learning on one surface. So to do that, I want to get over that surface. And we want to minimize motion, but we want to make sure that the hand is tracking everything so that every stroke does indeed come down, and rebound back up. Again, and the rebound is when it's moving, but you just never want to throw your hands somewhere. So when we start noticing videos of people just kind of throwing their hands this way, if it's not a very complicated pattern, you know, there are different things that are being asked of players, and some fun stuff that's rarely written into books, but it's maybe in solos and soloistic materials that have players doing some different things technically. That's with every instrument. That's with every single instrument. If I were to play stuff match grip on one surface and play that fast of rolls, as opposed to I'm changing my technique a little bit to ensure that every note speaks correctly. So that happens here as well. We're talking about that baseline fundamental technique. You want to make sure that your hands are over those locations as best as possible. If I'm standing here and I'm trying to play on drum 4 8th notes, I'm going to have my hand in a location to where my wrist can still turn just as normally as it turns here. All right. My left hand, I'm not going to play drum 4, just throwing the stick over there to where I hit it at some way. All right. I want to make sure that I move my hand over. And with our method, I'm going to make sure I move it over to where the stick is parallel. I turn my wrist and I can play from there with relaxed elbows the entire time. So keep that in mind. I'll be making more videos for some things with quad pads, bass pads, some different things that can help you guys, I hope. Anything that I can do here that I can get out to you or anyone that can help, I think is beneficial in any regard. So again, some of this stuff is maybe things that you have heard and you haven't dealt with them for a while. You haven't focused on them in your own practicing for a while. It might be things that you haven't heard ever that makes sense of how we approach things. And it might be totally different than you've ever been taught, all right, which is totally fine. But being adaptive to our process is really important. That's important for anyone. A football player that off of his talent at his high school that makes a certain collegiate football team, they made that team based off of that talent, but that team might need to ask them to do different techniques in different ways that they might not have ever heard before. It's all in line to make sure that the game plan is the same and everybody's thought process in the entire section. So the more you can adapt to some of this stuff, the better off you're going to be. I wish you the best of luck in making the videos and preparing for all of this stuff. If you need anything, let me know. Take care of yourself, wash your hands, roll tide, and we'll talk soon. Thanks.